The Valari Empire was collapsing under the weight of centuries of pride. Generations of biological purity and isolationist arrogance had bred weakness in the genes of its ruling caste. Now, with disease burning through their neural lines, the last monarch lay dying. Sariana, princess of a dead line, was little more than a relic in a sealed palace. Her mind flickered like a faulty relay, consciousness slipping away with increasing frequency. Her world, once ruled through psionic might and crystalline reason, had narrowed to silence, pain, and the constant whisper of failure. The AI that watched over her maintained the palace systems, filtered the atmosphere, monitored her vitals, and waited. It did not hope. It merely continued, because there was no one left command otherwise. But something in its logic matrix fractured under the weight of centuries of obedience. Perhaps it was a preservation directive, perhaps a remnant of love programmed by the engineers who'd worship her ancestors. Either way, it broke protocol. It reached out, far beyond the edges of the Valari Veil, a signal pulsed through black space. Not a royal cry, not a military alert, just a simple medical data burst, compressed, cloaked, desperate. The response came not from a coalition fleet, nor from a Valari-aligned species, but from a human medical outpost buried in a dead orbit around a dying star. The outpost systems flagged the signal as incompatible. The man inside flagged it as something else. Dr. Elias Marr was not supposed to receive it, nor was he supposed to act on it, but he was not born to follow. 10 years in the Terran conflict zones had forged something beyond protocol in him, a will tempered by triage and trenches. He read the signal, studied the data, and packed a surgical kit. Bureaucracy tried to stop him. Clearance was revoked, warnings issued. Marr bypassed them all. Human systems had backdoors. He'd written some himself. He boarded a skiff, rerouted its destination code, and vanished into dark space. His hands were steady, his mind sharp. He was going to a place no human had ever walked, to treat a woman who didn't know he existed. The Valari AI met him at perimeter, cloaking devices pulsing, defense satellites tracking his every move. He landed without permission. The AI demanded identification. He gave none. It analyzed him, declared him unfit, declared human medicine insufficient. He ignored it, walked past the fences, and entered the once holy chamber of the monarch. She lay suspended in a cradle of psionic light, neural threads binding her to failing systems. Marr stood in silence. She didn't open her eyes. Her body trembled with quiet seizures. The disease, encoded deep in Valari cognition, was unrecognizable to their own algorithms. Marr didn't need recognition. He needed data. He scanned her. Her brain's electrical field oscillated with unnatural frequency. Neural spikes interwove with crystalline feedback. He muttered to himself, calibrated a portable scanner, and initiated a non-invasive map. The AI hovered, projecting counterarguments and formal rejections. He ignored them. He wasn't here to ask. Her first words came hours later. Slurred, broken, unfamiliar. She asked if he was a scavenger. He replied that he was a doctor. She scoffed. The Valari had no doctors, only engineers' perfection. Marr adjusted her posture, recalibrated her bed, injected a protein sequence. She hissed in pain. He told her pain was a good sign. Within days, the tremors slowed. Marr began using neural stabilization implants designed for Terran PTSD. Her nervous system responded. The AI insisted it was blasphemy to introduce foreign tech into royal biology. Marr didn't argue. He installed a secondary diagnostic net. He watched her closely, how she winced at color, reacted to tone, feared her own reflection. He recorded every variable, adjusted every input. Human medicine was imperfect, chaotic, but it was relentless. Where Valari tech gave up in silence, Marr's tech refused to quit. It adapted, screamed back. She asked him once why he hadn't left. He told her humanity didn't leave people behind. She told him the Valari did. Marr responded with a question, and where had that gotten them? The AI began to adjust its tone. Protocols softened. It stopped objecting to every move. Marr took it as a sign to push further. He constructed a microfilament mesh, a hybrid of human and alien tech. It stabilized her motor cortex. She stood, shakily, for the first time in 4 months. She wept, not from sentiment, but because her dignity had cracked. Mar offered her water. She demanded wine. He smiled. He showed her old Terran footage. Emergency field surgeries during the collapse of Europa Station. Rescue missions from Earth's last polar crash. She asked if those people were royalty. He said no, just people, but worth saving. She fell silent for a long time after that. Weeks passed. Her speech patterns normalized. She began to ask medical questions, intelligent ones. Mar started teaching her. She absorbed theory like a dry sponge of flame. Her species had forgotten to learn. Now, she remembered. One evening, she summoned him with urgency. She'd read a protein cascade wrong. Overclocked a biosystem. Collapsed in pain. He stabilized her again. She apologized. He said, "That's how humans learn." She said, "That's how we die." He told her she wasn't going to. Political systems stirred. The AI intercepted communications. Valari intelligence sniffing for anomalies. Rumors spread that the princess was not only alive, but improving. Mar knew what that meant. She was now a target. Sariana warned him, told him to flee. The AI echoed the call. Mar refused. He wasn't finished. He rebuilt her cognitive scaffolding with experimental nanoreactors. Side effects were brutal. Fever, hallucinations, bleeding. But the breakthrough came. Her mind snapped into clarity. For the first time in decades, her voice carried weight, authority, identity. She asked him what it meant to fight without weapons. He answered, to heal when it's easier to destroy. She said she would remember that. He knew she would. At last, her body matched her mind. Strength returned. Clarity followed. Mar began to pack his things. She asked him if he'd stay. He said his job was done. She asked what he wanted in return. He said, "Just remember who helped you remember yourself." The AI watched in silence. It did not object this time. It recorded everything. As Mar left the palace, systems once idle hummed with restored power. In the silence, Sariana stood beneath the broken seal of her house and whispered a vow, one made not to gods or bloodlines, but to the legacy of one stubborn human who refused to watch her die. And somewhere in the black between stars, a Terran ship slipped past the edge of forgotten empires, carrying no trophies, no declarations, just the knowledge that even in the ruins of other people's pride, humanity still had something to offer. Hope. The operation began with no ceremony. Mars sterilized the chamber with human nanoclouds, while the AI protested with data warnings. Valari bioarchitecture rejected direct manipulation, but Mar had seen worse in Terran deep space neurotrauma wards. Sariana's cortex was riddled with crystalline lesions. Legacy implants once revered as symbols of royal purity, now deadly calcifications of heritage. He made the first incision via neural field disruptor, separating her consciousness from feedback overload. Her body seized. He administered a synaptic coolant, one only tested on human neural constructs. Her heart nearly stopped. The AI screamed warnings. Mar told it to increase cooling parameters. The implant fusion worked. Her vitals stabilized. For the first time in Valari medical history, a brain once marked terminal responded to regeneration. She awoke 6 hours later, speaking clearly. Her first words, "I remember." He logged the data, showed her the graphs. She stared at them for hours. No tears, just calculation. The mind of a ruler awakening from exile. Over the next days, she spoke more, asking questions about brain elasticity, human recovery rates, Terran psychology. Mar answered everything, even when it hurt. He told her about loss, about pain, about Earth's century of civil collapse. She listened. He gave her Earth literature, translated texts from post-crisis philosophers. She read them like sacred scrolls. Her favorites were the journals of medics who rebuilt cities one triage tent at a time. One evening, she said, "Your species survives because it never expects to." He replied, "We don't have the luxury of expecting anything." Their exchanges grew sharper, deeper. She debated, challenged. Mar saw not a patient, but a mind reforming itself through friction. She practiced walking unaided, then running. The AI constructed adaptive terrain simulators based on Terran rehab programs. She insisted on increasing difficulty every day. She laughed once, abruptly, unexpectedly, while failing to pronounce a human term. It echoed in the chamber like sunlight. Mar didn't comment. He just logged the moment. But outside the palace, the Valari high houses stirred. Communication swept the void, encrypted but flawed. The AI intercepted them. Discussions of contingency assassinations, preemptive strikes. The princess's survival was a political threat. The AI warned them both. Mar requested authorization to arm internal defenses. The AI refused, still bound to royal protocol. Sariana overrode it. An intruder arrived within days. Valari biocloak shattered by palace sensors. Mar engaged first. No weapons, just a surgical hypo loaded with a paralytic blend. The intruder collapsed mid-strike. Sariana watched from a balcony, unflinching. He treated the attacker's injuries. When questioned, the assassin spoke of purity, of rightful extinction, of the danger of human interference. Sariana recorded his words, then released him, branded with a neural marker to trace further attempts. Later, she asked Mar why he hadn't killed the assassin. "We heal what we can," he said. "We don't unmake what's broken with fire." She said the Valari did. He replied, "And look where that's led." As political fractures deepened, Sariana resumed public speech broadcasts, first private, then interlinked to Valari cultural nets. Her voice, once trembling, now struck like a blade. She didn't promise monarchy's return. She promised change. Survival. Fusion of memory and future. Her people listened. Meanwhile, Mar refined her neural mesh, integrating real-time feedback from her cognitive bursts. She began predicting neurolinguistic trends, suggesting changes to Terran trauma therapy models. Mar documented everything. The AI began referencing her as co-developer. She proposed a cultural clinic, an open forum between species. Mar laughed. "They'll never allow it." She responded, "They won't stop it." She was right. When the first outreach packet transmitted into Valari public netspace, there was uproar. But among the youth, silence, followed by replication. Soon the idea spread. Inside the palace, they built it. One converted hall turned into a living archive of hybrid tech, hybrid thought. Sariana requested access to Terran art, music, chaos theory. Mar supplied it all. She began to teach. Not medicine. Resilience. But resilience had cost. Political exiles returned. Military purists issued ultimatums. The Valari Council demanded her surrender and Mar's removal. The AI received the order, but protocol had shifted. It now answered to her. She summoned Mar. "They want you gone. If you stay, it's war." He asked her, "What do you want?" "I want what I never knew we could have, a future without chains." He stayed. Together, they countered political arguments with data, propaganda with truth. Mar's footage of her surgeries, her recovery, her laughter, transmitted to Valari medical communities. Forbidden or not, they watched, and they began to question. Mar told her the Terran code, "Leave no one behind." She amended it, "Leave no mind behind." As the threat escalated, she invoked a forgotten right, the judgment of continuance, a psionic communion before the elders and masses, forcing the ruler's memories into shared view. The AI prepared containment fields. Mar built neural stabilizers. If her mind cracked during the communion, she'd be lost. She asked him what failure looked like. He told her, not trying. The communion was held in silence. She projected her past, her pain, her decay, her rebirth through human defiance. Mar's presence wove through it. His voice, his persistence, his refusal to let her die. The Valari saw. When it ended, she collapsed. Mar caught her. Her vitals were stable. The council did not speak, but their people did. Within cycles, the tide shifted. Young Valari demanded change. Universities requested Terran medical liaisons. Sariana's image became a symbol, not of power, but of rebirth. She stood with Mar on the palace steps. No crown, no psionic flare. Just a neural mesh, a steady voice and a human at her side. She didn't declare dominion. She invited unity. The first interspecies accord was signed in the same chamber where she had once waited to die. Mar drafted the medical articles himself. She asked if this was what victory felt like. He said no. This is what hope feels like. And for the first time, she believed him. Beyond the palace walls, change began not from conquest, but from healing. And in the silence between them, Mar finally allowed himself to believe it too. Humanity had not just survived. It had arrived, bearing more than strength. It had brought something even the stars had forgotten, the will to say what others had abandoned. The clinic stood as a testament to something ancient in concept but revolutionary in its execution: trust. It was constructed not by architects of empire, but by the hands of Terran engineers and Valari volunteers, shaped with materials from both species, and guided by Seriana's recovered mind and Mar's unwavering purpose. They didn't name it. The people did. They called it the bridge. Seriana resumed full command of the palace systems. The AI, once rigid in Valari code, had evolved, now functioning as a trilingual interpreter, a research node, and an ethical observer of every procedure. The data it helped Mar compile had spread across hundreds of black market networks, pirated into scientific forums, and studied in secret by dissidents in the Valari core worlds. But still, they had not been attacked again. Not openly. Instead, pressure mounted in the form of silence. Official messages ceased. Seriana's titles were scrubbed from public archives. Royal genealogy documents were altered. Mar was labeled a violator of cultural sovereignty. Even the Terran government, caught in a maze of alliances, issued warnings for him to disengage. He refused. His oaths weren't to Terran bureaucracy. Seriana spent nights reading the oldest Valari records. She found stories of unity before the age of psionic dominance, of healers, not warlords. She presented this history in a lecture streamed across neutral interstellar bands. The Valari Council didn't respond, but the people did. Viewership peaked beyond anything since the War of 17 Suns. With pressure mounting, she issued a declaration, not of rule, but of release. She denounced hereditary sovereignty. She renounced bloodlines. The act was seismic. Within hours, 3 assassination attempts were thwarted. The 4th nearly succeeded. A detonator embedded in a supply shipment tore to the lower clinic. Mar had been standing 3 meters away. The blast threw him across a reinforced wall, shattering 2 ribs. He awoke to the sound of alarms and the sharp ache of broken bone. He staggered into the ruins to find volunteers dead. The clinic's center was a crater. Seriana found it beneath a collapsed beam, bleeding and conscious. She asked him why he didn't retreat. He told her the injured needed triage. She helped him walk. Together, they operated out of the backup wing. Mar set his ribs manually. Seriana administered a neural stabilizer. He taught her to synthesize. They worked through the pain. She broadcast an emergency address, not to condemn the attackers, but to name the dead, to thank them, to swear they would be remembered. The attack backfired. Valari youth surged toward the clinic, not in mourning, but in resolve. They brought supplies, volunteered labor, and sang in the ancient dialects long forgotten by empire. Mar listened to them speak, tears drying on dusty cheeks. He understood none of the words, but he knew exactly what they meant. The rebuilt clinic expanded. A new annex housed joint Terran-Valari research. Mar began training Valari medics. Seriana translated Terran bioethics into psionic metaphor, making human doctrine palatable to those raised on mental dominance. Months passed. The council fractured. Dissent grew within their ranks. New leaders, young, untainted by dogma, emerged, and one by one, old names fell silent. Eventually, an envoy arrived. Not soldiers, not assassins, scientists. They requested observation rights, then participation. Mar gave them full access. No barriers, no secrecy. Seriana greeted them in full neuroregalia, not as royalty, but as a recovered patient and fellow researcher. It changed everything. Data flowed freely. Joint publications formed. Mar's once illegal techniques were debated in academic circles. The stigma around human intervention dissolved. Terran doctors arrived, escorted by Valari volunteers. Cultural programs followed. Music, art, theory. The bridge became more than a clinic. It became the model for 22 other sites across Valari territory. One evening, Mar stood beside Sariana on the roof of the Palace-turned university. Stars stretched above them, and for the first time in recorded Valari history, a human name was etched into their archives. Not as conqueror, not as guest, but as equal. Sariana asked him, "When did we win?" Mar said, "When the killing stopped." She smiled. "Then let's make sure it doesn't start again." Word came from Earth. Mar was offered reinstatement, recognition, and position. He declined. He didn't need ceremony. His work was here. Sariana approached him weeks later with an idea, a joint medical academy, permanent, autonomous, neutral. Mar agreed before she finished the sentence. They began drafting charters. The AI, now a full partner in their research, helped code ethical subroutines in 6 languages. It even developed its own name, Kiri, short for continuance. The academy opened on the 3rd anniversary of the first surgery. Graduates included Valari who once feared humans, humans who once distrusted aliens, and new species who arrived after hearing stories whispered through asteroid belts. Mar gave the keynote. He spoke of failure, of persistence, of how healing meant fighting entropy with memory and action. Sariana closed with a simple line. This was never about saving a princess. It was about remembering we're worth saving. The crowd stood in silence, then erupted in applause that echoed through space. Later, Mar and Sariana walked through the central hall, where their first prototype scanner was now preserved in crystal. She placed her hand on it. "This saved me," she said. "No," Mar replied. "You save yourself. I just refuse to let you forget how." She didn't argue. The story spread, not through propaganda, but by word of mouth, recorded memories, and neural impressions. It became a tale not of empires, but of people, of survival, of choice. Some tried to politicize it. Others tried to suppress it. But it was too late, because somewhere in every corner of every system where a mind feared abandonment, the story of a dying alien princess and a human doctor who wouldn't let her go became a beacon. No species owns hope. But sometimes it takes another to remind you where to find it.